Hello, everyone. My name is Larissa Martinez, and I am the founder and president of the Women's Public Leadership Network. And we are so excited to have you join us today and to have Valerie Dowling be our guest of honor. This is a new series that we will be doing monthly called Leadership Spotlight, where we will be highlighting women from around the country that are in a number of different types of positions and how they formulated their leadership journey, how they got to where they are, how they face different challenges, and to just give some tips of the trade for those that are looking to either enter a similar field or just how to be a leader in your space. So we're so thrilled to have Valerie joining us. Just before we get into it, for those that don't know, WPLN is a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit that is working to get more center and right-leaning women into public office. And so we're so thrilled. Valerie, she is the executive director of the Women's Democracy Network at the International Republican Institute, which is a think tank. So I'm going to let her give more information on that. But we're just so thrilled to have you, and thank you so much for joining.
Thanks so much, Larissa. It's an honor to help WPLN kick off this series. As you mentioned, I'll just give a brief kind of intro of myself. I serve as the director of Women's Democracy Network over at the International Republican Institute. Not a lot of people have heard of us, so we are an international, nonpartisan nonprofit that works to advance democracy and freedom around the world with local partners in over 100 countries. We're funded by primarily by the U.S. government, so State Department and USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy to help support this work. And I feel really fortunate because my day job is to work to support women getting involved in the political and civic life of their countries all around the world. And in my free time, I get to be part of an organization like Women's Public Leadership Network that also supports that same mission here in the United States.
Yep. And good point. I forgot to mention that Valerie is not only one of our board members, but she is vice chair this year and has actually been with the organization since we began in 2019. So we're, again, just so excited to have her on the program as our first one to kick off. So Val, as you know, this program is meant to explore your leadership journey, how you got to where you are. And, you know, your position is one that obviously requires a lot of different skills. You're working in the international space, but obviously there's overlap into the domestic. So can you tell us a little bit about what positions in your past have helped get you the skills needed to feel successful in your current role?
Sure. That's a great question, Larissa. And I feel like my story is kind of what I describe as an accidental discovery of my passion. So I started in politics. I spent the first 10 years of my career in the domestic political process. I worked in a lot of different vantage points, from the White House to presidential campaigns to a political party. And through each of those positions, I built relationships which opened doors that led me to my current role. So when I worked at the very end of President George W. Bush's administration, I actually had a colleague who after the transition, went to work in Afghanistan with IRI, where he was working to teach Afghans how to run political campaigns. And so I ended up working for a grassroots women's organization, working to get more women involved in the political process in the U.S., immediately following the White House. And so as I got into that role, my White House colleague reached out and was like, hey, I think you should connect with this group that's just launching through IRI. They're creating this organization called Women's Democracy Network. And it's really a platform that's working to connect women to one another and to build the skills that they need to move into political leadership positions. And so while I was doing that domestically in my career, I volunteered with Women's Democracy Network as a trainer and traveled a few times to support some of their programs in the field. And eventually, when I was ready for a shift, they had a position open, and it just was a natural fit for me to move over to learning what this looks like in the international space.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting that you and I have talked about at length is how many similarities there are, no matter where you are in the world, in terms of some of the challenges that women face, but then also some of the leadership skills that are needed to be successful, no matter what arena you're in. And so I'm just curious, from your vantage point, what skills do you think are non-negotiable for anyone that is looking to hold a leadership position?
That's a great question. I feel like what I've come to see as being really critical if you're going to lead is to be able to build trust with the folks that you are trying to lead in a certain direction, right? I think having a vision is important, but really at the end of the day, the critical piece that shifts from being a leader to, bringing other people alongside you is really building trust with your team.
Yeah. And I feel like that's easier said than done, but I think to your point, being intentional about it is necessary, to say the least. So obviously, as you mentioned, glossed over briefly some of the like really cool and important positions that you've held in your past life, and some of the really interesting work that you've done in this public service sector. And you're obviously still doing it in a little bit of a different capacity from your domestic work, but it's still this passion for service and bringing people into this public leadership sphere. So at what point did you feel like this was really what you wanted to stay in for your career more than just a passion? And were there other paths that you had considered at a different point?
Sure. I was pretty lucky that I got bit by the political bug back in high school. And so I always knew I wanted to work in politics. I don't think I understood what the job opportunities looked like or how to get there. So I just started trying out different things. I volunteered on a Senate campaign. I interned with my local solicitor's office. And then I applied for internships. And so that really opened the door to bringing me to Washington, D.C. I served as a White House intern in First Lady Laura Bush's projects and policy team, which was just an incredible experience. After graduation, I came back on staff at the end of the President Bush's administration and was able to work in the White House, which was an amazing job. And he also really kind of showcased what public service was. The mantra around being part of his team was always that we are there to serve. And so that really helped shape what public service looked like. I went into grassroots work after my time at the White House, which was learning how to support people who were volunteering and doing the hard work to get people, and particularly women, more involved in politics. Worked on a presidential campaign. I worked on Mitt Romney's presidential campaign when he ran in 2012, and then eventually ended up at the RNC doing women's engagement before coming to IRI. So I think each of those different positions have taught me that public service is a key part of how to think about your place in the mission you're trying to support, right? It's not about us as individuals, but it's about what we're working towards.
Yeah, so true. So you had mentioned previously that one of the contributing factors to where you are currently was having people that helped open doors for you and kind of be there with you on your journey. So in terms of mentors, what do you think makes a good mentor? What did these individuals do for you that really helped not just open doors in terms of finding positions that may be good fits, but actually kind of helped guide you as you were growing professionally?
Sure. I attribute so many mentors throughout the life of my career. And I want to point out, too, that it has been some really amazing women, but also some really incredible men who helped to give me a seat at the table. They helped to call out my strengths. They helped to work with me on ways to mitigate some of the areas that I wasn't as strong in, and they opened doors for me. And so, I think mentorship is really critical. And I think that, you can talk to just about anyone and learn how many people have been really critical in helping to shape them as leaders throughout their professional and personal leadership development. So I think it's a really important piece of growing and learning from others who have, kind of walked in similar spaces.
Yeah, and I think some people get a little intimidated with the term mentorship because it seems like you hear mentorship programs or you hear, it feels like yet another responsibility or another activity you have to do. But mentorship can be many different things. It can take on many different forms. So why do you think it is so important to at least have some of these basic connections, especially for women as they're looking to kind of move through their careers and kind of find what their passion is?
Absolutely. Well, I found the most successful mentorship relationships for me have always come about a little more organically than something that's a more formal process. And I think that's really important, right? We all need people that we can look at for examples. And it's really important to have those people that you trust, that you can go to ask questions and help share perspective as you're navigating your career and big decision points. And so, I think that it's really essential to find those people in your life and to ask them to, be that person for you. And again, to look at who do you admire? Who is someone that you respect? Who's doing something cool that you think you might be interested in learning from? And I think that's kind of a great place to start identifying mentors. And then also that kitchen cabinet concept, right? So many people, whether they're running for office or they're serving in a senior leadership role, they all have this kind of core group of people in their lives that they trust to tell them the truth. And to be a resource. And so I think that's just a really critical part of again, kind of continuing to grow professionally and personally.
Yeah. I'm going to pause for just a quick minute and to let those that are watching live know that we are open for questions. So if you have any, feel free to put them in the chat and we will integrate them into the conversation. But back to the conversation. So as you know, WPLN, although we are a nonpartisan nonprofit, we do have some principles that guide the work that we do, and especially in the center right space and to women that identify as center right leaning and some of the challenges that they face. And I just wanted to kind of pick your brain as someone who has seen it from all different sides, that what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that exist specifically for women that identify as, kind of this middle ground or more right leaning that maybe don't find themselves on the wings of what we're seeing presented today in the national media?
Yeah, that's a big challenge. I feel like, to me, one of the things that I see as being really important is to break down the stereotypes of what it looks like to be a woman who identifies with center right, ideology or spaces. I think that there's so many labels around what draws women to a specific identity, whether it's, political affiliations or ideologies, whatever that might be. And so I think it's really important to be able to find the opportunities to have really honest and open dialogue about why, what are the issues that draw me to identifying and is more of a center right leader or, perspective. And I think sometimes it's just hard to find those spaces to have those conversations and really talk about a broader set of issues than I think a very small subset of issues that people like to kind of force on women as they're thinking about political affiliations.
Yeah. And I think to that point too, just kind of going off of it, is that, there's so many of these kind of refinements of your own personal philosophy on certain positions or, how certain principles are guiding how you see the world. It does require bigger conversations and discussions and experiences than just maybe what you've either always grown up with or think that you need to kind of fall into just based on who you are around. So kind of with that in mind, what tips would you give to those that are just starting out in their journeys to start at least having the options and the opportunities to explore, where all the different facets of the world, so to speak?
Wow, that's a really good question to reflect on. As you were saying that, Larissa, I was thinking about how much I've changed and evolved and grown as a person from where I started in my career and, just thinking about politics and where my space was. I think one of the biggest things I've learned is how important it is to build relationships. Relationships matter in any industry. I think one of the first pieces of advice someone gave me when I was starting in DC was to really know that the group of people I was working with now would be people that I worked with at different points throughout my entire career. And I think that felt a little strange to me to think that, we're in this big world and there's so many different people, but I think it's been really true. And so I think building those relationships and being a kind and kind of respectful colleague in a variety of different settings is really essential to kind of navigate different opportunities that might pop up. You never know who your next hiring manager is going to be. It could have been someone you worked with when you were an intern. It could be someone you met at an event. And so I think it's just kind of helped me to think about the type of person I want to be in relation to my colleagues, and also learn the art of relationship building and management. And I'd also say too, I think it's important to build relationships with people who don't think like you, who don't necessarily come from the same background or experience. I think those are really important to build and kind of stretch you, and help you to understand, the world around you, and that it isn't exactly like you've experienced it, right? People come from all sorts of walks of life and experiences. And so I think it's really valuable to kind of connect with people who are outside of your immediate world.
Yeah, so true. Especially learning how to have respectful conversations with people that you may not always agree with. But so for those that, as they're doing this exploration and building relationships, if they're looking to add public leadership to their professional lives, whether that be holding an appointment or, actually seeking some kind of public office, what factors do you think they should consider first? Or at least, like, what are some of the questions they should ask themselves before kind of making that leap?
I think it's really important to go into the arena and particularly public leadership positions with your eyes wide open. I think it's really helpful to talk to others who've navigated similar spaces that you're interested in, to understand kind of what it was like and have a more realistic picture of what's ahead. And I also think it's important to have your family on board, or whoever is in your life, so that they kind of understand how they're going to be impacted in public leadership life. It's not just limited to you as an individual leader, but it does have ripple effects on the people around you. And so I think it's just good and sets you up for success to know what that looks like, what life is like, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, and make sure you have a good support system around you.
So moving into your future life, just because we're getting close to the end, but you're obviously someone who is kind of mid-career, so to speak, in terms of, you have a lot of experience behind you, but you have so much more in front of you as well. So what do you think is the next phase for your leadership journey? Or better put, so we don't make your employers nervous, what type of experiences or expertise would you like to either try and get, or at least have an opportunity to explore kind of moving forward?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I have my dream job right now. I'm so thankful to get to support the mission of helping other women move into political leadership positions, because I think it matters on a variety of levels. But what I would say in this moment I'm most excited about is taking on the vice chair role with Women's Public Leadership Network. I'm so excited about the mission that WPLN is working to build a pipeline of public servants with purpose. And so I'm really excited to kind of invest some more time in supporting WPLN, and looking forward to watching how that builds a pipeline of future leaders.
And we are excited too to have you there. So we do have an audience question that I want to throw out there to you. How do you prepare and adjust to working internationally and across different cultures?
That's a great question. And I think that's something that people are always curious about. Our work and what it looks like, right? We obviously have one example of what it means to build democracy and engage women within that in our U.S. experience. And as Larissa mentioned, there's a lot of universal pieces, right? Very similar challenges and very similar opportunities across our global network. But I think the real secret sauce for us is working with partners on the ground to understand what that looks like. It may be a similar challenge, but it looks very different in one country context versus another. So we work very closely with women who are on the ground in these countries, and we provide general resources that we really look to them to contextualize for what makes sense in their country. And in the moment in time and the political process that they find themselves. So that's how we're able to kind of adapt and adjust and make sure that we're coming in with humility and sharing our experience, and hopefully providing resources and information and examples of one way to do it, but also learning from so many who are doing a lot of things better than we are in some situations. So it's local partners, and also realizing that we have a lot to offer, but we also have a lot to learn.
Yeah. And just for my own personal curiosity, what country are you looking most forward to building relationships in that you don't currently have?
Oh man, that's hard when you work in a global network because there's just so many new opportunities that we're looking at. But I'm excited to really support women in Afghanistan and Iran who are on the forefront of leading protests for change, and I think are going to be the key to longer term democratic transitions in their countries. So those are two that are kind of top of mind right now, and also continuing to support the amazing women who are leading the fight in Ukraine as well.
Yeah, just so incredible given circumstances. It's truly amazing. So last question that we have for you is kind of I hate to say it, it's the usual question, but I think they're always so interesting, is what is one piece of advice that you would give to women that are looking to put themselves out there and become leaders, whether that be in their professional careers or in this public space, just general leadership?
Yeah, I think I'm going to end with, don't be afraid to jump into the arena. The world needs you and what you can bring to the table. And I think sometimes it's so easy for us to think that we don't have anything new to add or offer. And I think that just inhibits us from being able to be the answer to a lot of the problems that we see around us, right? And so I would just encourage people to try new things and jump in. You can learn. It's okay to fail in the process, but I do think the world needs you, and look forward to seeing what we're going to do with more women in all sorts of different leadership positions in the future.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we so appreciate you taking some time and sharing your insights and experiences with the broader audience. This is going to be available on our YouTube channel. So for those that are joining us late or would like to catch it later, you can watch it anytime moving forward. But Val, we're so grateful for you joining us today. For those that are interested, please follow and join us at our summit that is coming up in San Diego. We're thrilled. Valerie will be there. I will be there. So we'd love to see you. But anyway, thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Absolutely. Thanks, Larissa.